And good day. Thank you so much for joining us. I am Tamara Scott. You're listening to Tamara Scott Live, powered by webcast1live.com, webcast1live.com. If you have friends you want to listen, you can email that link to them. And there's also an app where they can pay attention and join us on their phone. If they're techie that way, I wouldn't know how to do it, but they can, and we'd love to have them be part of the show as well. If you want to send the show to someone afterwards, we have the podcast available, Tamara Scott Live on YouTube. Tamara Scott Live on YouTube. You can send those to a friend. Today we have some great, I think a great show for you. I'm so excited about it. You know, we've talked about the Common Core a lot on this show. The purpose of this show is helping us when the headlines hit home. And for many of you, you know, Common Core has been something we've talked about, discussed quite a bit. A couple of weeks ago, Glenn Beck, out of the Beck Studios, did the event, We Will Not Conform. And on that show was a lovely, beautiful young lady. And he talked to her about tests. And when she spoke, I think eyes across America must have bugged or bulged with surprise. The theaters across America, 700 theaters had people in them. And I think they must have I think we audibly heard a gasp when she said the line, "Tests are designed to fail students." This is someone who's been an administrator in the public schools, an assistant principal, and here she was delivering this indictment, I guess, if you will, on the testing process in American schools today. So without further ado, because our phone lines are already filling up, I had some things I was going to show you on the Common Core here. I'm going to skip it. We had a great event in Black Hawk County, just July 29th, and we have another one coming up August 19th in Bremer County, August 19th. We'll be talking to the folks there in a town hall meeting. 81 people came July 29th. 81 people. People are getting the truth. As this Common Core starts hitting the classroom, more people are learning about it. It's coming home in the backpacks. They want to know, and we'll look forward to Bremer County, August 19th. If you want information on that, here's the easiest way. You can email Stop Common Core Iowa at Gmail, or you can follow the Twitter, Stop CC Iowa. Stop CC Iowa is the Twitter. So stopcommoncoreiowa at gmail.com. You can always get a hold of me on the Facebook page, Truth for Our Time, or Tamara Scott, either one. All right, so let's hop to that phone line. Joining me is Kathleen Jasper. Good morning, Kathleen.
Good morning. How are you? I'm happy to be here.
I'm so pleased. I thank you for taking time out. I knew as soon as you did that show on Glenn Beck, your life was going to change, your phone was going to ring, and you were going to have a busier schedule.
Yeah, I'm really busy, but it's good. I'm glad so many people are interested in the topic because I had worked literally for months and months and months with nothing, and then all of a sudden it just exploded, which is good because we want more people to be aware of these issues.
And you were in the public schools. Give us the rundown.
Okay, so I come from a family of public educators. My aunts and uncles are educators. My mother was a kindergarten teacher for 25 years. She was later an assistant principal and then a principal. Now she is a district administrator. I was a teacher and later a curriculum person. And then after that, I was an assistant principal. So I've worked many different jobs within the public school system. So I've learned a lot while being in those positions. And then I started to kind of understand what was going on with the standards. And it started with No Child Left Behind under President Bush. And then as Race to the Top moved in with Common Core, things started to get really crazy, especially on the high-stakes assessment end. And I started getting vocal about it and saying, you know, these tests are unfair, and why are we spending all this time testing? And teachers are being forced to, you know, their autonomy is being stripped. They're not able to teach creatively. The students are being shuffled into remedial reading when they don't even really need it because of just one test score. Kids are being denied diplomas over one test score. Third graders are being retained and not able to move on. In the state of Florida, there's a law that if they don't pass the test in third grade, they're retained. So even if they have all A's and they have all the requirements. The one measure will keep them, the test score will keep them from going on. And so I started to get very vocal about this, which was not received well. District administrators and my principal specifically were not happy with me speaking up against it. And so I finally quit and just said, I can't change it from the inside. I'm going to try and change it from the outside. And I started conversationed.com, where I was blogging about the injustices and what was happening. And then I ran into a friend of Glenn Beck's, and Glenn Beck had just written the book Conform, and I was writing all this stuff on Common Core and high-stakes testing. And so, ironically, Glenn Beck's producers called me, and an unlikely bedfellow flew me out to Dallas, and we were able to work together on this and bring some major awareness to what's happening in our public schools.
I have to tell you, I love that. When he got down right next to your face in the camera and said, here's someone who didn't like me, and now she's here with me. You didn't have a lot in common. The two of you have differing views on would you say, many things, lots of things, some things?
I think there are some fundamental things we differ on. You know, I consider myself a liberal. I hate the definitions because I feel like it puts us, again, the same thing I'm fighting with standardized testing and these categories and these standards. I feel like they don't do people justice. But when it comes to, guns and things like that, I just have a different view. But for me to change his view on that, I would have to go back in time and change his experiences, and he would have to do the same for me. And I'm not interested in doing that. And I really like him as a person, and I understand why he feels the way he does about the issues that he does. And I'm sure he understands why I feel the way I do about the issues. But on education, we agree. And, I think it's awesome that two people from completely different sides of the political spectrum can get together on this and bring their camps to the table and say, look, forget about everything else right now. Let's just talk about this. Let's sit down and have a discussion on how we can work together, because I think the public is sick of the divisiveness. And I think they're sick of how much the media kind of plays in to these differences that really, at the end of the day, when I sit down with Glenn Beck, we're not that different. We really aren't.
I think you're right. And I think you're absolutely right that the public is tired of the division. I think the labels limit what we can do. It marginalizes us because it polarizes us. Before we've ever decided politically if we may or may not agree, we've already lumped somebody into a spot where we can't work with them. So I thank you for coming on this show. You and I probably disagree with several things as well, but we agree Common Core is not healthy. It's not good in the classroom, and you have more experience than I do on the testing. So let's go to the testing. What I think jaws dropped in theaters across America when you said boycott the test.
Yeah, well, okay, so I think there was a little bit of confusion about the actual setup of Common Core, because I went to the encore presentation last night, and I got to say, we weren't real clear in the beginning of what we were actually against. We got right into the problem-solving piece, and I feel like it might have left a few people behind in terms of understanding.
Okay.
So, one, I can do a quick rundown
Sure.
of why all this is happening. So you have to start with No Child Left Behind, because that's when the accountability movement started, and that's when the testing really started coming into play. So back in 2002, George W. Bush signed into law No Child Left Behind. It was a big push from his brother Jeb. Jeb at the time was the governor of Florida, and a lot of this accountability movement in education started here where I'm from in Florida. So we have this is really ground zero for what has happened across the country. And so with No Child Left Behind, President Bush wanted to hold schools accountable and hold teachers and students accountable. So they decided to have these tests that basically assessed the standards. Under No Child Left Behind, states were allowed to have their own standards. And so states, like for Florida, we had the Florida Sunshine State standards, and every other state had their own standards, and every state had their own tests. And so during that time, we all had our standards, we assessed the tests, and we started to see failure rates happen with kids. Kids were not passing the test, and it painted a dismal picture of, the proficiency levels of our students based on these standards. And so we all panicked and we started putting these kids in remedial reading and remedial math. And, like the high school that I worked, 50% of the students were in remedial reading and math. And a lot of those students were readers, good readers. They liked to read. But once we started testing them incessantly, they began to hate reading, they began to hate math, and they began to hate school. And one of the things that was happening, and George Bush's attempt to give states autonomy, meaning letting them choose their own standards and their own tests, you had states that had easier standards and easier tests. So like Florida had a really, really tough test. Our test was one of the more quote unquote rigorous tests. And you had other states, and I'm not going to name those states, but you had other states where the tests were a lot easier. So you couldn't really gauge in the country, like someone in this state might look like, oh, their students are so much smarter than the Florida students. But really the tests varied so much that you couldn't really look across the data to see what was going on. And so there were problems, and there were problems from the beginning whenever you have this kind of thing happen. And so then we go to President Barack Obama. He comes in to play, and he has his own accountability, his own reform movement called Race to the Top. And the funding for that came from the Recovery Act. And states were encouraged to adopt Common Core, which are the new set of national standards. And if they adopted Common Core and all of the parameters with Race to the Top, they would get a large sum of money. Florida got $700 million, which is a lot. And so what Common Core was attempting to do was make all that variability among states and standards and test scores common. So it was pushed onto districts like, hey, guess what? We have this new set of standards that's going to make everything the same for everybody. So if you live in Washington State and you move to Florida, you're going to get the same education and the same this and the same that. Well, educators knew right away that's ridiculous. That is impossible. There is no way that you can teach every student the same and expect every single student to score the same on every test. It just doesn't work that way. The people that live in Florida are a lot different than the people who live in Utah. There are difference in poverty levels. There are difference in family dynamics. It's just everybody's so different. And so we knew right away that it was going to be a debacle. With Common Core came an onslaught of more tests. And the testing companies that were profiting from No Child Left Behind, they were going to make even more profits off of the tests that come with Race to the Top and Common Core. And so when you have a failure rate of over 50%, in Florida it's over 50% in reading have failed year after year, there is no movement. No matter how much we put them in remedial reading, no matter how much we test, no matter how much we change instruction based on standards, they fail because the tests are designed that way, because there's money in failure. The testing companies that win the contracts by the federal government to make these tests make money every time a student has to retake the test. So for our state test, SCAT, it costs about $30 a student. Well, in high school, when that student has to keep retaking the test, we keep paying that $30. So multiply that by every student, every district, every state. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars for testing companies. With Race to the Top, those companies stand to make even more because it's not just one test now. Race to the Top wants common assessments among all content areas. So you not only have a reading and a math test, you have a geometry test, you have a biology test, you have a U.S. history test, you have all of these other tests, and you're talking just a cash cow for these testing companies. In order to stop this machine, Common Core, and the federal government coming in and trying to put a blanket and mandate on every single student, every single teacher, every single family in the country, you literally have to disrupt the machine. And in order to do that, you have to boycott the test. You have to stop taking these tests, which will mess up the money for the testing companies. It'll mess up funding, and it will cause a major disruption. And people will try to intimidate parents and students into taking these tests because there's a lot of money tied to them. But in order for us to make a dent, to make waves, to let people know that we're not doing this, you literally have to cut it off at the knees. And the only way to do that is to boycott the test. And we're providing a free webinar on August 24th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. People can sign up on the website, conversationed.com/webinar, and they can sign up, and we will provide them all the information they need, and they can choose to boycott the test, or they can just get a lot of information that's really important and have a better understanding of what's really going on here with their students.
Okay. Now, we already have callers on the line. I do need to take a break. I need to give a worthy due to our sponsors. And when we come back, we're going to be joining our American Family Radio listeners. They have a portion of this show that airs Sunday evening, 6:30 p.m. So for those of you who are listening and live with us on webcast1live.com, if you want a friend to hear this, 6:30 p.m. Sunday evening. Maybe you have that friend you've tried to talk to about it, but they get their back up and they don't want to talk about it politely. You could just say, listen to this program. I'm going to listen, see what it's about, see what you think. 6:30 p.m. Sunday evening under the banner of Restoring Hope. You'll hear that playing when we come back. And Kathleen Jasper is my guest today with conversationed.com. We've got callers on the line, great callers as well, people who have been guests on this show already. So we'll look forward to having them join us when we come back. Kathleen, I'll probably have you recap just a little bit about the boycotting of that test and the fact that they were designed to fail students. That just blows the mind of every parent out there. I am Tamara Scott. You're listening to Truth for Our Time, and we thank Webcast One Live Studios for giving us the power to be with you today, and our sponsor, Christians for America, Crave, and ChristiansForAmerica.com. We'll be right back after these messages.
Get away from us, you mean old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit! You're our hero!
Metro Ford's on everywhere. Metro Ford's on everywhere.
See 'em here, see 'em there. You got bad credit? We don't care.
Metro Ford's on everywhere. Metro Ford's on everywhere.
Visit emetroford.com for your guaranteed credit approval. Good credit, bad credit, no credit. Everybody drives with guaranteed credit approval at emetroford.com.
Metro Ford's on everywhere.
Visit emetroford.com today.
Hey, psst. Let me let you in on a little secret. You ready? Always try to do business with people, not places. Especially if you seek honest Christian business people. And when it comes to my car, I really need to trust who's working on it. Now, my family is so blessed. A few years ago, we found a family-owned automobile repair shop that operates as a Christian business also. Open, honest, reliable, trustworthy. It's AMCO on Hickman Road in front of Kmart. And it's a family-owned Christian operating business. This family treats your car as if it was their car. Everything from oil changes to transmission repair and everything in between. So the next time you feel the need to be at peace with your choice of who you can trust with your car, give AMCO on Hickman a chance to serve you. And tell them Max sent.
Open my heart to sing, taking the darkness inside, revealing your light, restoring hope.
And I am Tamara Scott. Thank you for joining us for this portion of the show. You're coming in mid-section of our program. If you want to hear the whole thing in its entirety, and I think you very well might, you can go to YouTube and look up Tamara Scott Live. Today's date, July 30th, 2014. My guest is Kathleen Jasper. Kathleen Jasper is the founder of conversationed.com. She is a former administrator in public schools and assistant principal, but you might have seen her face if you watched the Glenn Beck event July 22nd in theaters, 700 theaters across America. She was the beautiful young lady he put his face down next to and said she didn't like me a while ago, but she's agreed to work with me on the Common Core. And so today I'm honored and pleased to welcome Kathleen Jasper, one of several that I get to work with in battling the Common Core. That we may not agree on everything. We likely have different political values. We may have other different values, maybe different beliefs in our faith, but we have understood what's best for our children in the public school setting right now and the education realm of today, and it's stopping the Common Core. And in Kathleen's case, she's got clarification for us on those tests that we all tell our kids, now be very careful. This is very important. Make sure you do your very, very best. Kathleen Jasper, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
And this show comes under the banner of Restoring Hope. And I think, obviously, if we can write some things in our public schools and give our children the best future, that is the best hope that we can give. Of course, we come at it from a faith aspect here on the show, but I think that giving kids clarity and truth, that's what we want. That's what we're after. Kathleen, I know as a parent, I have said to my kids, this test is important. Make sure you have everything ready. I have put pressure on my kids, and now you're telling us that these tests are designed to fail students?
Yes. I mean, there's no money in achievement. There's only money in failure. The test is really about testing companies, and the tests are not designed to look and see what your students know. And when I talk, they're designed to test what your students don't know. And when I talk to students, it's funny, I just ran into students today at the gym. They were there. They were former students of mine, a couple of them that had been in my office many times for misbehavior. And they were saying, hey, how's it going? And I said, oh, it's going good. And I said, I'm no longer with the district. And they were like, what? And I told them about Conversation Ed and what I was doing. And they said to me, and they're now in college. One's in community college and one is a realtor now. They said, yeah, I was in intensive reading like the whole time I was in high school, and I couldn't take my electives. I couldn't take art. I couldn't take this and I couldn't take that because I was too busy trying to pass this stupid test. And they were thanking me, saying, I'm so glad someone is bringing it to the attention of the people because we just blindly accept what the schools are telling us to do. Like you said, when a test is given, you tell your kid, do your very best and pass the test. And what we don't see is the amount of stress being put on our youngest students, third graders. We're seeing awful anxiety in third graders because the test determines their whole life. One measure determines everything for these students, and it isn't right.
We've got callers on the line. Are you okay if we go to callers? Because there's more I know you have for us, but can we take a break and go to some of these callers?
Yeah, bring the callers on for sure, yeah.
Okay. First we have Alice Linahan, who's been a guest on this show. She has her own radio program, Women on the Wall, out of Texas. She's been battling the Common Core, been threatened by, I think, her Attorney General as well for doing a good job in getting the word out on the Common Core. Alice, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. And I went to Kathleen's website, and you're just doing wonderful work. And I just thank you for being tough and speaking out.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for going to the website.
And so let's talk about some of these tests, though. I mean, I just can't get over the fact that they're designed to fail our students. So our kids are taking these tests. And Ryan, were you able to get that video offline from Utica, New York, where the teacher is describing what happened to her student during the test? You take time to see if you can get that. When you get that, if you can, let me know. I don't know if you ladies have seen this video. The audio will be enough for our listeners where the teacher describes what she sees when students are frustrated taking these tests. So, Kathleen, how young are students being forced to take these tests?
They're starting them in kindergarten. There are Common Core assessments that will be administered this year in Florida to our kindergartners. When I looked at the curriculum plan for Lee County, the district that I am in, 65 assessments in kindergarten. 65 assessments in kindergarten.
In kindergarten. And I've heard where some of these tests are like 90 minutes long. In kindergarten, are they that long?
Yeah, I mean, you have to. The tests are very, very long, and these little babies are having to sit and and take these exams, and it's really, really difficult on them. They're just not equipped to do it. And a lot of the reading is done on the computer, which you and I both know. Reading with a hard copy where you can underline and circle words and things like that is much different than reading on a computer screen. And so I really caution people, you really need to look and see what is going on with your kids and ask about, what assessments they're being made to take, which ones are required and which ones are not required. And be very careful. And I would even encourage people to refuse the test. In Florida, it's better to have no score than a low score. You have a right to refuse the test. They just don't tell you that.
No score is seriously better than a low score?
No score is better than a low score. Once they have gotten you as a failure, they then will put you in remedial reading. If they have no score for you, then that means that they will have to use a portfolio assessment, meaning they'll have to look at the actual work that your student has done. And I encourage parents to be diligent in collecting artifacts from your child's school. Collect the writing samples, collect the reading samples, look at make sure they know their math, make sure you know what their math scores are, things like that, so that they aren't just going by one measure. Fight for your kids. Don't let them take one score and say, your kid didn't read well on this test, so she's going to have to be withheld going into fourth grade. It's one of the worst things that can happen to a student is being retained.
Kathleen, that's some of the best advice, and I give that advice to our parents all the time on this show. You are the advocate for your children. God uniquely designed you, created you to be the carrier, the giver, the life giver, the trainer now on earth of those kids, and they are the only possessions on earth that you can take to heaven with you. And so, yes, what Kathleen is saying is absolutely true. You, of all people, we have the experts. I get that. But the time has come when it's no longer a good idea to listen to the experts. They've gotten us in the mess that we are in. They're often motivated by money, as we've seen with the Gates Foundation and funding so much of this Common Core and other things that are pulling at them politically. You have only your children that you answer to, that you're responsible for, that you'll answer for one day when you stand before God, the God who gave them to you. So, Alice, did you have a question for Kathleen?
I did. I was curious. In Texas, we have the big STAR test. Everybody prepares for it. We all know that it's happening. But what I'm finding in my own third graders class is there's a lot more assessment going on that I'm not even aware of.
Alice, you are so right.
I would love for people to understand that this is much bigger than a big test. It's being tested they're being assessed, and data is being collected all the time that we don't even know about.
Right. You're absolutely right. In fact, a study just came out saying that districts are actually testing more than the state and the feds are requiring, because districts are trying to figure out where the students are so they can prepare for the big test. So they're essentially testing to test. And you are absolutely right. When I talk about the 65 tests in kindergarten that are going to be happening this year, and it just goes on and on and on as the kids go into elementary, middle, and high. A lot of those tests come from the reading programs that districts adopt, and the same people that build the reading programs build the tests, and they're the same ones that make the textbooks. The publishers are the test makers. So within the books, the Common Core aligned books, or even your older books that aren't Common Core aligned, just the ones that are aligned to the standards that were through No Child Left Behind, there are assessments within those curriculum frameworks that the district then uses. It is assessment overload. Kids are literally testing 50 to 60% of the time. They're testing non-stop. The instruction loss right now in American public schools is staggering. Kids are just becoming test-taking drones. That's what's happening.
For those of you who are listening, This is Kathleen Jasper. You can go to her website, conversationed.com. Alice Linahan has asked her the question. Alice has her own website, which is hashtag Can I See? Something parents need to be asking, can I see? Kathleen, you're talking about the numbers of tests, the testing time kids are taking. You don't learn while you're taking a test. You might find out that you had to answer wrong or right and learn from that. But teaching doesn't happen during a test.
I'm sorry, what was that? You're a little bit muffled. I can't really hear that well.
I'm hearing that today. I'm sorry. Go ahead and please let me know if you can't hear me. I don't know if it's a setup we have here in the studio. But while you might figure out what you had right or wrong on a test, you can't really teach in a test. When you say we've lost our teaching time because we're spending so much time testing, kids are not learning. What tests do is sort children. They don't teach children, they sort children. And the concern...
So you're talking about teaching to the test?
Well, I'm just saying when you're using the test so much, whether it's for practice or to see what the kids know before they actually matter on these tests, it's not valuable time for these kids. They're losing that teaching time. They're not gaining.
I'm sorry. I cannot hear you because there's so much static.
I wonder what.
Sorry.
Let's do this. Let's see if you can hear this. Take us through the records. If they take a test, does it ever come off their record?
I'm sorry, I still can't hear you. I'm so sorry. It's just nothing but static.
Okay.
Oh, now I can hear you.
Well, I don't know what that would be.
Oh, if you talk, I'm sorry, it's coming in a little too loud. If you can just talk
let's try this.
Back away from the microphone.
Is that better?
Oh, yes, I can hear you now.
Well, how funny is that? Okay. No, if the tests come out, do these tests ever leave the child's record?
No, they stay on the child's record. But here's the thing. Nobody cares about the FCAT or any of these tests once these kids leave school. We put so much emphasis on these tests, and then the kids, they literally are sick over the FCAT or the STAR or whatever your test has been, and now they'll be sick over the PARC exam or whatever the test is going to be with Common Core. And then they go on with their lives, and these tests, your employer doesn't say, what did you get on the PARC exam? Your potential, employer is not going to say that. And they do stay on their records. So, once a kid starts failing in third grade, that kid will continue to fail.
Right.
And so what we do is we categorize that student. The student is then labeled with a number 1 through 5, and anything below a 3 is bad, basically. And the kids know it. They know they're a 2. They know they're a 1. And so they go through their lives from kindergarten on saying, I'm a 1, I'm a 2. And so it's this self-fulfilling prophecy so that when they get to the next grade, they are automatically thinking they are bad readers and they're bad mathematicians and they don't know how to do what the other kids are doing. And it becomes self-fulfilling. And they end up in remedial reading the entire time. One of my students contacted me the night of graduation. And he said, Ms. Jasper, I just got word today that I failed the FCAT again. I will not be receiving a standard diploma tonight. I will have to receive a certificate of completion. I have failed the test in third grade, but they retained me in third grade. He had to stay back, but he has completed all of his work. He got he was a BC student. He wasn't an honor roll, but he was a BC student. He did all the requirements. GPA was fine. His grades were fine. All his assignments were in for all these years, and then they denied him a diploma at the end of this torturous school experience for this kid. And he is just broken now because of it. That affects him. That will affect him the rest of his life. And that's what they're doing to our kids.
It makes me wonder, Kathleen, I know we have a correlation between kids and antipsychotic drugs, what do they call them, anthropic drugs. But some of this makes me wonder if some of those kids had received this kind of attention and this kind of label and been so frustrated with the schools themselves. Has anybody done a study on that?
Well, I have not done a study, but I'll give you some qualitative research that I've done on my own as an assistant principal. 90% of the students that I saw in my office for behavioral problems all came from intensive reading classes. So what we do is we test these kids, We make them sit for 90 to 120 minutes on a computer and sit there and take a test. When they fail it, we put them in remedial reading, which is the most boring class you could ever take. Okay, it's awful. We turn readers into non-readers. We turn well-behaved kids into poorly behaved kids, because when they can't sit and do kill and drills, which is when we take fluency and vocabulary and kill them and drill them with these skills that they don't want to do, they act out. And so then they're medicated because they can't sit still in school. And I will tell you, and I am not a psychiatrist, so, I mean, people can take this with a grain of salt or whatever, but in my experience, the behavior problems and the ADHD, not that there isn't real cases where kids do need medication and all that, but we are over-medicating because we're expecting them to sit still for an amount of time that a grown adult would never be able to do. And we're expecting them to do that. And then we're calling them failures. So what do these kids have to lose? Nothing. Why wouldn't they act out when they're being pegged as failures and losers by the time they're in first grade?
Kathleen Jasper is my guest, and I so appreciate what Kathleen has to say. Kathleen, you and I are in agreement on that point as well. We've done several shows concerning the over-drugging of our students, and now the over-drugging of America in general, including infants down to 6 months for a diagnosis that may or may not be. Robert Whitaker, a journalist, has done a great book called The Anatomy of an Epidemic. You might find that one interesting as well, Kathleen. I think, do we need to take a break here? For our, okay, we're doing okay. All right, we'll keep going. And I want to bring in Meg to the conversation. Alice, you're welcome to stay on hold if you wish, but let's bring Meg in. She's been patiently waiting, and I want to hear what Meg has to ask or to say. Good morning, Meg. How are you?
Good morning. I am terrific. How are you?
I'm fine. I have to tell our audience who's listening, Meg is another one of those lovely people I feel a very good connection with. We are Facebook sisters.
We are across the miles.
And we may not agree on everything, on some things. I don't know. We don't know, but we agree Common Core is dangerous, and what's happening to our children in the schools is not healthy right now. Common Core has to go. You probably have a question for Kathleen. What is it?
I just wanted to tell her how much I love her.
Thanks, Meg.
I am also the token liberal who stepped down from the classroom after seeing these behaviors that you're talking about, and seeing these stress levels, and these children cannot verbalize their frustrations, and so they begin to act out, and they stab themselves, and they pull out their hair, and they cut themselves, and the whole thing. I was one of those remedial reading teachers in Florida under Jeb Bush. That's how I started my teaching career.
I was too. That's how I started. I was a reading teacher. That's exactly how I started.
And I saw it all the time. I had the bottom 20% of the kids at the high school level, and they were fine. They could read, but they had been labeled a failure. They were in a very, very high poverty school, and so they would go out at night and sell drugs because that's what everyone expected them to do. Yep. And it was just absolutely heartbreaking. And when I saw, after 18 months, I taught Common Core for 18 months here in Georgia, and I saw, I saw what it was doing to my low-income kids here. And I knew that if I did not leave, I knew I couldn't speak out if I was still there. So I knew if I did not leave and give these children a voice, nothing was going to change. Nothing was going to happen. And so I started Opt Out Georgia.
Nice.
And we've begun, we had great success this past spring. It's going to grow even more. And I want Georgia and Florida to work together, because I really think that there's huge things that can be changed. And I just, the bravery you had in going on the Beck show was just phenomenal. And when you told him that you took his book and sticky noted it and put sticky notes all through it, I laughed, because that's exactly what I did with it.
Well, so I got to tell you, Meg, our stories are so similar. I was a reading teacher in high school. I had the bottom 25. Of course, they call them the bottom 25, so all the kids know I'm the bottom 25.
Right, I'm the bottom 25, right.
And I saw the same things you saw, and I admire your courage to leave. And we are working with Opt Out Orlando with our boycott seminar, our boycott webinar. So definitely get me on Facebook, and we can kind of cross notes, to make sure we hit all the important things that Georgia may need too. We're working with several groups, opt-out groups, to make sure our information is airtight and that we're giving, every state is different. We want to make sure we give the right information, or at least the right resources to each and every state, because we are having people sign up from all over the country.
That is absolutely fabulous. And I am finishing up my doctorate in special education, and I am seeing just frightening things happening to our special needs kids too. And I'm
finishing my doctorate too, Mag. That's crazy. Our stories are like so aligned.
That is wonderful. As soon as Tamara said you were going to be on, I said, I have to meet her. I have to meet her, please. and she knew.
And let's just remember, it was Tamara that brought you together.
It was.
Thanks, Tamara.
Go me hanging out with the liberals today. Who would have guessed it, right?
I know, and that's what I wanted to say. I'm so tired. I took a break over the summer because I was so tired of being beat up.
You were beat up.
And I said, when I talk to people, I'm so tired of us being divided by these labels, and all it is doing is weakening us.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to stop. We have to come together on this for our kids. And
like Jeb Bush and Bill Gates and Barack Obama and Arnie Duncan, they're all coming together to make money off of us. Why wouldn't we come together? I mean, they don't want us to come together.
Exactly.
They want us to be divided because it undermines the movement. But they're all coming together to make money. Why shouldn't we all come together to protect our kids? I mean, who cares how you feel about guns or abortion? We're all mothers.
I have to step in there, being the conservative that I am. Some of us care very strongly about abortion and guns and the Second Amendment and all of that. But you're right. Where we work together, where we can agree, we absolutely come together.
Absolutely, we don't have to break each other down over that, because it undermines what we're trying to do as parents and as students and teachers and educators. We care about our children. I mean, regardless of what side of the political spectrum you're on, we all care about our kids.
Yep. And here's the deal. And we just did a show with the Benham brothers that will have aired last week. And, they were persecuted and discriminated because of their religious views. So that's really where we're at today. If people will not limit us and hold us back as Christians, as conservatives, then I think we can make some strides and some gains. And I think we can work together to do some things. You may not like this either. Governor Huckabee is the one who said it very well. He said it's when we get put into our groups, you force us into a polarization, and then we're paralyzed.
You're right.
It's that
You're
isolation.
right. And I've got conservatives praying for me. They're calling me and saying, I'm praying for you. I mean, that's just great energy. We've had awesome feedback from Tea Party members. It's been wonderful.
Now, I'm going to ask you both to hold. We've got to go to a break. Our American Family listeners will leave us now, but we'll continue this show, and if they want to hear it, they can go to YouTube, Tamara Scott Live. Today's date for the show is August 6th, I think. And so they can hear the show with Kathleen, Jasper, and we may just put Alice and Meg's name on there too. But for those of our listeners with the American Family Radio, we're going to say goodbye to you at this point. Meg, Alice, Kathleen, if you can stay on with us and stay with us for a little bit, we'd like to continue the conversation. We're talking about testing, what it's doing to our children, the impact it's having, and what it's not doing. It's not measuring what they know. It's measuring what they don't know. And it's designed for many of them to fail. There are the opt-out policies. You can go to conversation.ed, opt-out Georgia, opt-out Orlando. There's opt-out. If you do a search on opt-out, you'll find help on how to get your kids out of the test. You have that right as a parent. They are not forced to take that test. When we come back, ladies, I want to talk about the possibilities. What happens to these kids who don't take the test? What is their future like for college, for scholarships, that type of thing? So we'll talk about that when we come back. My guest is Kathleen, Jasper, Conversation Ed, Alice Linahan, Meg Norris are on the phone lines. I am Tamara Scott. Truth for Our Time is where you can find us, and the archives are always available at YouTube on tamarascottlive.com. For our American Family listeners, we bid you adieu, and remember, be encouraged and never be complacent.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershide.
I'm administrative manager.
I'm the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's gonna be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're gonna be listening. They're gonna wanna know what your challenges are. Then they're gonna come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
Enough said.
And thanks for staying with us, Tamara, Scott, live. We've just finished our Restoring Hope portion of the show, and my thanks to J. Malcolm McCoy, American Family Radio, for allowing us to share that airtime with them. We're here with Kathleen Jasper from Conversations.ed. Meg Norris is also on the line. Meg is a school teacher who stepped away because of what was happening, and she was seeing it in the classroom and thought she could fight it better outside the classroom, much like Kathleen. Their stories are parallel. We're finding out on the air. Alice Linahan is still on the phone line as well. Alice is out of Texas, and her website is Women on the Wall. She's got a radio show there, and Can I See is her program. What every parent should be asking: can I see my child's homework? Can I see the books they're reading? Can I see what you're going to say to them today? And here's my concern as a Christian parent. I learned, having my kids in the classroom, you could not know everything that was going to be said, the tones, the attitude that your teacher was going to have. And as we've seen on some of our shows, Christianity and freedom of religion seems to be the one thing that is greatly under attack today. And so for those students, it is quite a scary thing, having them in the classroom and not being able to know what's going to happen or be said to them. But I want to go back to Kathleen Jasper. I'd asked right before we took this break, we hear so much about the testing, and now there are the opt-out alternatives. Kathleen, what happens? I mean, this is a scary thing for parents because we're looking at scholarships, we're looking at college admissions. So if you don't have these tests, you said earlier that no score is better than a low score. But what alternative do we have for these students then to move forward and further their education without these tests?
Well, we don't know yet. That's part of the leap of faith you take when you stand up for yourself. You know, we cannot forget our history. We cannot forget movements of the past where we've had to exercise our civil disobedience and sacrifice things. I encourage parents to collect artifacts, like I said before, of their child's progress. So you know how well your child reads, you know how well your child writes. The best thing that you can do while you are opting out of these exams or refusing the test is to make sure you're collecting those things so that you can later show schools and things what your son or daughter has done. We don't know what the repercussions are in terms of scholarships, but scholarships typically look at GPA. They don't look at your test scores. Test scores are a way for districts to make decisions, not necessarily scholarships. So many scholarship organizations are still looking at good old-fashioned GPA and, you know, letter and what kind of extracurricular activities your student is in and all of that. The test scores are really used by the district and the state to make decisions. When it comes to admissions into college, you know, the SAT and the ACT, some colleges require those tests, but a lot of colleges now are not requiring an ACT score or an SAT score because they know they aren't the best predictors of college success. GPA
Really?
is.
They're not requiring it. That's good to know. And I think you're right. I think for a couple of years, it may be an uncertainty as how it will impact students not having those scores. But if you remember right, or if I'm remembering right, back in the day, it seems like colleges didn't quite want homeschooled students. They weren't sure. They didn't have they didn't have the traditional GPA, the transcript. And once they learned, on the whole, homeschooling students were excellent students. They were prepared and they excelled at the campus. They started targeting and recruiting those students. And I think it might be the same with this. It might give knowledge that these parents are cued in, paying attention, and the lack of test score, as you're saying, may be a predictor for some of these colleges that parents have taken greater measures.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right about that. You know, it's going to take a little bit of uncertainty. And I said this on the Glenn Beck We Will Not Conform event. We're going to have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. We're not sure what's going to happen. But I liked what you said before we went to break when you said never be complacent. Blindly following these policies because you're afraid of like what might happen in your student's college career and all of that. You can take back control of this. You just have to be forceful and you have to show, look, my son did this project, my daughter did this, my son did that, and really have an understanding of what kind of progress your students are making. Demand that a portfolio be reviewed because you have the right under the law to have a portfolio review, but many parents don't exercise that because they don't know the law or they don't have time. We're all running at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and before you know it, we've got these policies that are hurting our kids being implemented. So we got to be present, and we have to be willing to, when we opt out of these exams, we have to be willing to be intimidated because the principals and the assistant principals and the guidance counselors and whoever, well, probably not the guidance counselors, but even the teachers are being told to push back on parents. So if a parent says, I'm opting my student out, a lot of principals are pushing back and intimidating them. You have to be able to stare back at that intimidation and say, no, because we have found that a lot of parents cave. As soon as the principal starts saying things like, well, your son or daughter won't be allowed in the gifted program, they immediately cave when really they don't use those scores for gifted programs. They use GPA and work portfolios. You just have to be persistent. You have to be informed. You have to be consistent also. Don't let them push you around because they will. We're talking about big money. And when you start messing with people's money, they're going to push back on you.
And Alice Linahan can tell us about that. She got it from her own state. So, Alice, actually, I think maybe she had one more question she's been holding on the line. Alice, did you have another question for Kathleen?
I do, actually. It's interesting because we had Dr. Duke Pesta here in Texas last night, and this whole conversation came up about getting into the colleges. And what's interesting is we're dealing with it. We have a third grader. We're dealing with the assessments and the testing. We have a senior looking at taking the SAT and looking at scholarships. So we're looking at both sides. And what Dr. Pesta recommended too is if you've got a child that wants to get into a certain college or university, they want your money or a portion of your money. And so if you say, you know,
We lost Alice mid-sentence. The point is very well taken as we're coming near the close of our station. Alice, if she can get back on the line, I'd love to hear what she was going to say to that
She's
point.
right. They want your money. She's exactly right. They want your money. So whatever way they're going to get it. They don't care what your FCAT score is or what your STAR score is. If you can prove that, that you can be at the college, they're going to take your money. There's going to be, and colleges are going to start, once these boycotts and these opt-outs start happening, colleges and districts and states are going to have to rework how they admit students. We have to change the conversation. It can't just be about test scores anymore.
Well, Ian, here's another show that I'm going to do. I think we're going to have the education bubble next. We've had the housing bubble. We've had the Wall Street bubble. I think the education bubble is coming. I think it's a matter of time. And honestly, if I could be the one to stick the pin in the bubble, I'd do it. For too long, the college degree is overpriced. It's undervalued. And you're talking about work, the portfolio. Remember the days when we had internships and apprenticeships where kids learned. I think employers have to come back to stop asking for a college degree for every job that they have available.
Google's not asking for college diplomas anymore. They're not asking for scores. They're not asking for any of that. Some of the biggest companies, the best companies in the world, aren't asking for it because you know what? Colleges are doing the same thing as high schools are doing. They're getting played the same way. And you know what's happening in colleges? It's the standardization. There's no creativity anymore. There's no learning taking place. It's just preparation for more tests. And I'm telling you, people are going to start backing away and saying, I don't care whether or not you graduated college. Google is already saying they want apprenticeships. They don't care where you went to school and what your scores were. They really do not care.
Kathleen, Jasper, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be, talking with all different people and getting together on these issues. It's really important. I'm so happy to come together with you on this. Thank you for having me.
I am as well, and I know you and Meg are going to be fast friends and working together as well. And Alice on the line for joining us. Ladies, I do believe if we decide to really engage in this country will change. There's nothing like some busy grizzlies. And,
that's right.
And I think it's time, and I think it's what we're going to see. And I thank you for what you're doing in the battle. ConversationEd.com. You'll find Kathleen Jasper, who you saw on the We Will Not Conform event with Glenn Beck. If you can watch an encore performance, please do that. Meg Norris is also online on Facebook. I know you can find her. Meg, do you have a website?
No website, but I do have Common Core and the Brain. On Facebook.
Common Core in the Brain. Alice Linahan, Women on the Wall, and hashtag Can I See It on Twitter, and you'll find where Alice has things online as well. I am out of time. I am Tamara Scott. I thank you for this very energetic, fun hour of good information for you. And again, I do say it. Be encouraged and never be complacent.